Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed a younger woman smile at an older man and wondered what's going on there? Is it admiration, respect, or is it something else entirely? Most men assume it, simple politeness. Others, perhaps more cynical, think it's meaningless, just another social nicety, nothing to think about. But what if I told you that smile is loaded with meaning? A meaning most older men never fully grasp, because you see, the modern world has left men adrift, uncertain of their own value. And yet, despite all the noise, despite the ever-changing cultural landscape, there is something timeless, something fundamental about how people, especially women, respond to strength, wisdom, and presence. A young woman's smile at an older man isn't just about attraction. It's not just about wealth, status, or power. It's about something deeper, a recognition of stability, of experience, of groundedness. When an older man receives a smile from a younger woman, his first instinct might be to dismiss it as simple politeness, a meaningless gesture, or even a social formality. But in reality, that smile often carries a far deeper meaning than most men realize. It's a subtle yet powerful signal of recognition of something primal, something deeply embedded in human nature. Women, especially younger women, are naturally attuned to qualities that represent stability and experience. They are wired, whether consciously or unconsciously, to notice strength. Not just physical strength, but emotional, psychological, and intellectual strength. When they encounter an older man who exudes a sense of calmness, certainty, and self-possession, it triggers an instinctive response. That response often manifests as a smile, a moment of acknowledgement that communicates, "I see something valuable here." This recognition isn't necessarily about romantic attraction, though it can be in some cases. More often, it's an appreciation for the presence of a man who has been through life's battles and remains standing. A man who carries himself with dignity and quiet confidence is rare in today's world, where many people, young and old alike, are lost in uncertainty and self-doubt. Younger women who are still navigating their own journeys can sense when someone has walked the difficult path before them and come out stronger. The smile, then, is a reflection of something ancient throughout history. Wisdom and experience have always commanded respect in past societies. Elders were sought after for their knowledge, their ability to provide guidance, and their unwavering presence in times of uncertainty. Even in modern times, despite cultural shifts that downplay the significance of older generations, that fundamental instinct remains. When a younger woman smiles at an older man, she may not even fully understand why she does it. It's an unconscious acknowledgement of something she finds reassuring, even admirable. Unfortunately, many older men fail to recognize this. They have been conditioned to believe that aging makes them invisible, that their value diminishes with time. But that is not how human nature operates. Strength, resilience, and wisdom do not go unnoticed. That smile isn't empty. It's a reminder that stability, self-mastery, and experience still hold weight in the world, and for the man who understands this. It serves as a quiet validation that he still has something meaningful to offer. Modern society has done everything in its power to convince older men that they are no longer relevant. The rapid rise of youth-centered culture, constant technological shifts, and changing social dynamics have all contributed to the idea that once a man reaches a certain age, his value declines. He is told subtly or overtly that his time has passed, that his wisdom is outdated, and that should step aside for the next generation. This message is reinforced through media, workplace culture, and even within social interactions, leaving many older men feeling unseen and unappreciated. However, this narrative is not rooted in reality. It is a construct of a society that often prioritizes novelty over substance. The truth is that age does not diminish a man's value. Rather, it amplifies it, provided he has used his years wisely. Experience, discipline, and emotional resilience are traits that cannot be replicated overnight, and they remain just as essential now as they ever were. The issue is that many men buy into the false belief that they are no longer needed, leading them to retreat from life, become passive, and in many cases lose the very qualities that once made them strong. Younger women, despite growing up in a world that increasingly dismisses traditional masculinity, still possess an instinctual recognition of what is valuable in a man. They are drawn to strength, not just physical dominance, but the kind of strength that comes from overcoming adversity. developing wisdom and maintaining emotional control. A man who has built himself into someone capable, someone with depth and insight does not go unnoticed. Even if society tells him otherwise, the problem arises when older men accept the lie that they have become irrelevant. When they begin to see themselves through the distorted lens of modern culture, they lose confidence, they stop carrying themselves with purpose, and they begin to fade into the background. This is not the natural order of things. This is the result of a system that has undervalued the role of experience and leadership. The reality is that older men still have a crucial role to play. The world needs them, even if it refuses to say so outright. And when a younger woman smiles at an older man, it is often because she, even in a small way, SAS, is something of lasting worth. The question is whether the man himself recognizes it. Women, especially, younger women, are naturally drawn to stability, wisdom, and strength in a man. This is not a modern phenomenon. It is a deeply ingrained aspect of human nature that has existed for thousands of years. While society constantly shifts its values and narratives, fundamental human instincts remain largely unchanged. Women are not merely seeking surface-level attributes like wealth or status. They are seeking something far more essential: security, guidance, and the presence of a man who is truly in control of himself and his life. In a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain, younger women instinctively recognize the value of a man who is composed, disciplined, and selfish. There is a stark contrast between a man who has built himself over time and one who is still figuring himself out. The younger man may have energy, ambition, and potential, but the older man, if he has cultivated himself properly, has something far rarer: wisdom earned through experience. That wisdom translates into stability, and stability is one of the most attractive traits a man can possess. This attraction to stability is not necessarily about financial security, although that can be a factor. It is about emotional and psychological security, the kind that cannot be faked or imitated. A man who is steady, who does not crumble under pressure, who carries himself with quiet confidence, becomes someone that others, including younger women, naturally gravitate toward. He does not need to prove himself with bravado or external validation, because his very presence exudes certainty and competence. What many people fail to realize is that in today's world, true masculinity rooted in strength, wisdom, and responsibility is becoming increasingly rare. Many younger men struggle with identity, direction, and purpose, often lost in distractions and insecurities. In contrast, an older man who has weathered life storms, who has developed emotional control and self-discipline, stands out. He represents something solid, something reliable, something deeply needed in an age of uncertainty. When a younger woman smiles at an older man, it is often an unconscious acknowledgement of these qualities. It is not necessarily about attraction in a romantic sense, but rather an instinctive response to a praise that feels reassuring. Women recognize and respect men who have built themselves into something strong. The tragedy is that many older men fail to see this in themselves, unaware that the qualities they have cultivated over time are still deeply valued. Whether society openly admits it or not, one of the biggest mistakes an older man can make is allowing himself to become bitter or defeated. Life inevitably brings hardships, failures, disappointments, and losses. But how a man responds to these challenges determines the kind of presence he carries. As he ages, some men use adversity as a tool for growth, becoming wiser, stronger, and more resilient. Others allow it to break them, turning inward, growing resentful, and believing that their best years are behind them. This distinction is critical, because women, especially younger women, can sense the difference immediately. There is nothing attractive about a man who has given up on life. A man who carries himself with an air of defeat, who sees himself as a relic of the past, does not inspire respect or admiration. He may once have been ambitious, confident, and full of purpose, but if he now moves through the world with the weight of his regrets on his shoulders, he becomes invisible. Not because of his age, but because of his energy, because of the way he sees himself. The way a man perceives his own value is often how the world will perceive him. On the other hand, a man who refuses to be crushed by life's difficulties commands attention. He may have scars, both literal and metaphorical, but they are proof that he has endured. He has experienced loss but still moves forward. He has faced failure, but still holds his head high. He does not let bitterness dictate his actions. Instead, he remains engaged with life, learning, improving, and contributing. This kind of man carries an aura of quiet confidence that is impossible to ignore. Women recognize this energy instinctively. A younger woman may not fully understand why she respects one older man, and powerful thing a man can do as he ages is to remain engaged, to continue building himself, and to refuse to be defined by his past. Strength, resilience, and wisdom do not fade with age. They grow, and the world, whether it acknowledges it or not, still respects that. When a younger woman smiles at an older man, it is not a random or meaningless gesture. It is a reflection of something deeper, something instinctive that she perceives in him. That smile is often an unconscious acknowledgement of the qualities he carries: his presence, his confidence, his stability. Yet many older men fail to recognize this for what it truly is. They either dismiss it as politeness or assume it is insignificant, missing an important truth about human nature. Women, whether they realize it or not, are drawn to men who embody strength and certainty. This is not about physical strength alone, but about the way a man carries himself in the world. An older man who has lived well, who has cultivated wisdom and resilience, exudes a different kind of energy, one that does not seek approval or validation but simply is. He does not need to prove himself. His life experience speaks for him. Younger women notice this. It stands in stark contrast to many of their peers who are often still searching for direction, still figuring out who they are. That smile is not necessarily about attraction in a romantic sense, though it can be more often. It is an instinctive sign of respect, admiration, or curiosity. It is a small but significant recognition that this man is different, that he carries something solid in a world filled with uncertainty. A man who has built himself into someone strong and capable does not go unnoticed. The problem arises when older men fail to see themselves the way others see them. If a man has internalized the belief that his value has diminished, that he is no longer relevant, he may overlook these subtle signals entirely. He might assume that he is invisible, when in reality he still commands attention. He simply does not recognize it. Confidence is key. A man who knows his worth does not second-guess these interactions. He does not shrink away or dismiss them as meaningless. Instead, he understands that he has something valuable, something that is still acknowledged and respected, even in a world that often fails to express it outright. That smile is a reminder. It is proof that strength, wisdom, and integrity never truly fade. They only become more refined with time. The question is whether a man has the awareness to recognize it and carry himself accordingly. Older men often underestimate the role they still have to play in the world. Society conditions them to believe that once they reach a certain age, they should step aside, fade into the background, and let the younger generation take over. This belief is not only false but deeply destructive experience. Wisdom and resilience are not qualities that lose their value. They become even more important as time goes on. A man who has lived through struggle, who has faced adversity and emerged stronger, carries something that no young man can instantly acquire: deep-lived knowledge. The truth is, the world still respects and needs men who have built themselves into something worthwhile. The problem is that many of these men no longer see their own significance. If they have absorbed the message that they are outdated, that their contributions are no longer necessary, and that their time has passed. But this is a dangerous illusion. The stability, insight, and leadership that come with age are just as relevant today as they were in any era. The difference is that men must choose to embody these qualities rather than retreat into the shadows. Younger women, despite growing up in a culture that often dismisses traditional masculinity, still recognize strength when they see it. They may not always be conscious of it, but they instinctively respect a man who is composed, who has direction, and who does not waver under pressure. A man who carries himself with quiet authority and purpose will always stand out, no matter his age. The reason some older men feel invisible is not because they have aged, but because they have stopped carrying themselves like men. The reality is that age itself is not what makes a man lose his influence. It is his response to aging. A man who remains engaged in life, who continues to grow, lead, and contribute, will always command attention. The respect he receives may not always be loudly acknowledged, but it is there. When a younger woman smiles at him, it is often because she senses something enduring, something strong and stable in a world that often lacks both. The crucial question is whether older men recognize this in themselves. If the world does not decide when a man becomes irrelevant, he does as long as he continues to embody strength, wisdom, and integrity. He remains a force to be reckoned with. Society may change, but human nature does not. The world still needs strong men, and those who understand this will never be truly forgotten.